I wish I had listened to him. That's what Shaquille O'Neal, one of the most dominant forces the NBA has ever seen, said when reflecting on advice he once received from the most decorated coach in league history, Phil Jackson. And that advice could have extended his career. This is a story about regret, ego, injury, and a very human moment behind one of the basketball's most larger-than-life figures. Let's talk about what really happened between Shaq, his broken body, and a coach who saw the end coming before anyone else did. It's 2002. The Los Angeles Lakers are on top of the basketball world. Shaquille O'Neal has just led them to a third consecutive NBA championship, and for the third straight year, he's been named Finals MVP. Shaq is an unstoppable force of nature, 7'1", 325 pounds of brute strength, skill, and agility. He's everything you could want in a center and more. And yet, while the confetti falls and the champagne pops, Shaq isn't entirely at peace. Why, you might ask? Because his body is already beginning to betray him. In the shadows of that third championship, Shaq was dealing with something that would come to define the second half of his career: severe degenerative toe pain. Specifically, a form of arthritis in the joint at the base of the big toe. In his own words, the pain was affecting his lift, his movement, and it was forcing him to shift his weight unnaturally, putting extra strain on the rest of his massive body. And while the rest of the league feared the Lakers' dominance, behind closed doors, a tough decision loomed. Enter Phil Jackson. To most fans, he's the Zen Master, a coach with 11 rings, a man who knows how to manage egos, build dynasties, and see the bigger picture. But to Shaq, Phil was more than that. He was a mentor, a spiritual guide, even a business advisor. And when Phil Jackson saw the pain in Shaq's step, he stepped in. He suggested a very specific, very serious surgery, the kind ballet dancers undergo, one that could have permanently addressed the issue. Phil's message was simple: if you can get this done right, you can play until you're 40. Shaq listened, but he didn't take the advice. Why? Because there was something else on his mind. Something beyond basketball. Something all too familiar to athletes with looming contracts. Shaq wasn't just dealing with pain. He was dealing with the politics of a professional athlete's prime. Negotiations with the Lakers for a new extension were already tense. And the idea of sitting out 6 months, potentially until January or February of the following season, was terrifying. He feared losing leverage. He feared being labeled injury prone. And most of all, he feared that the Lakers, already stalling on his extension, might use that surgery against him. So Shaq opted for the middle ground, a less invasive procedure that promised a quicker return. In theory, he'd miss 2 to 3 months. In practice, he missed the first 12 games of the season, and when he came back, he wasn't the same. He wasn't peak Shaq anymore, not quite. And though he still had big moments of greatness, the writing was already on the wall. That toe never fully healed, and eventually the Lakers would let him go. By 2004, Shaq was traded to the Miami Heat. Yes, he would win another championship in 2006, and yes, he would play until 2011, but the question remains, what could he have been if he listened to Phil Jackson? What if he had taken the time to truly heal, not just patch himself up? What if we got a fully healthy Shaq for 3 or 4 more seasons? It's not hard to imagine an alternate timeline where Shaq dominates into his late 30s, maybe even challenges for more titles alongside Kobe, or perhaps even as a veteran anchor for another franchise. But that's not what happened, and it's one of the few moments in his storied career where Shaq openly admits, "I wish I had listened." Now, this wasn't the first time Shaquille O'Neal ignored advice that could have benefited his career. Let's not forget Kobe Bryant, a relentless competitor who repeatedly challenged Shaq to take better care of his body in the offseason. Kobe didn't just want Shaq to train, he needed him to, because he saw what they could be if they were both at their best. But Shaq didn't see it that way. He was famously quoted as saying, "I got hurt on company time, so I'll rehab on company time." The friction between him and Kobe wasn't just personality, it was about mindset. Shaq knew he was dominant. He didn't always feel the need to go that extra mile, and that might have actually cost him years of excellence. And now, this story with Phil Jackson fits perfectly into that same narrative. Now let's be clear, Shaquille O'Neal had one of the greatest careers in NBA history. He's a 4-time champion, a league MVP, 3 times finals MVP, and a top 10 player on most all-time lists. But what if I told you he might also be the biggest what if in NBA history? What if he had trained like Kobe? What if he had taken the surgery? What if he added 3 or 4 peak years to his prime? When we talk about what if players, we usually think about stars who got hurt early, like Derrick Rose, or guys with wasted potential because of those injuries, like Penny Hardaway or Grant Hill. But Shaq was already great. He just could have been even greater. And that's the tragedy here. Not that he failed, but that he left something on the table. And it all comes down to one thing: pride. In truth, this story is bigger than Shaq. It's about athletes, it's about decision making, and it's about how even the most dominant figures, even giants, are vulnerable to the same human flaws we all face. The need to protect our image, the fear of being forgotten, the desire to stay in control. Shaquille O'Neal didn't listen to Phil Jackson, and he's honest about that regret. He's open about the pain, and in doing so, he teaches us something. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is listen, to accept help, to pause, to put your future ahead of your pride. And in sports, as in life, that decision can make all the difference. So what do you guys think? Was Shaq the biggest what if in NBA history? Do you think he could have played into his 40s like Kareem or LeBron if he'd had taken that surgery? Or was his dominance, even if brief in the grand scheme of things, so overwhelming that it doesn't even really matter? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives. I'm Damian Peters, this is Basketball Network, and we'll catch you in the next one.